Hello, my name is Miss Ashley from Fibo Kids Art Academy, and welcome to another amazing art class. Today, we are going to be learning about Minnesota, located in the Midwest region of the United States. Minnesota is also next to Lake Superior with a rugged landscape. The climate is warm and wet in the summer and freezing in the winter. The state bird is the common loon duck, and the flower is the lady slipper, and the animal is the monarch butterfly. One famous sculpture located in Minnesota is called Spoon with Cherry by Claus Oldenburg. Today, we will be painting that sculpture. For a list of supplies, be sure to check the description of this video. Let's go ahead and get started. So here is our painting that we're going to be drawing today. We're going to be drawing the sculpture of a spoon with a cherry. I'm just going to go ahead and put this to the side so we can get started with our practice draw. Make sure that your paper is horizontal, which means side to side, and that you're also using a pencil, but I'll be using a Sharpie so you can see my lines. The first thing we need to do is we're going to be drawing that cherry by drawing a pretty large circle, not too large. And then we're going to add the stem. Now for that spoon, we need to draw an oval that's tilted just a little bit. I'd like to start on the bottom left of that cherry and draw that oval. Then we're going to be drawing a wavy line. I would watch me first and then start drawing it. We're going to start at the bottom of that oval, curve down and up, and then back down. And then going back, curve up and down. Now I'm also going to add a slight curve here to show the bottom of the spoons. All right, we do need to draw a straight line. I'm going to actually start from the left side and continue that straight line, hopping over my spoon and hop and hop. All right, we need to draw that lake. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go in the middle of that spoon. And this time on the left side, curve out and in, out and in, and out. On the right side, continuing that line, I'm going to curve out and off the page, curve in to the bottom of the page. That is actually it for our practice draw. If you need to re-watch that and try it again, you can always go back and watch it. But I am going to be moving on to my final draw. This time for our final draw, not only are we going to be drawing the spoon sculpture, but we're going to be adding a little bit more details to that background. So make sure that you are still using that pencil. You may need to erase, but I'm still going to be using that Sharpie so you can see my lines. All right, make sure your paper is horizontal, which means side to side. I'm going to draw a circle for that cherry. And then the stem. All right, now I'm going to draw that oval. And then I'm going to draw the handle of the spoon by curving up and down. Then curving down, going up and down, back to the oval. I do want to see a little bit of the underside of that spoon, so I'm going to be adding a curved line right there. All right, now I'm going to draw that straight line, hopping over, and over, and over. Now I am going to add another line underneath the handle of that spoon and to the oval. Try your best to make sure that it is pretty even. Now on the left side of the handle, curve out and in, out and in and back out. And on the right side, curve out off the page, curve in and down. Now we're back to where we were with our practice draw. We're going to be adding some trees in the background. These are going to be the same shapes as clouds by just adding those curved lines. Now you can draw these as tall as you want or as low. That's up to you. But I'm just going to add those curved lines to form my trees. We're not going to be adding the trunks or those finer details. We just want a simple outline. And it does not need to look exactly like mine. Just as long as we do have those trees there, it will be okay. All right, so now that I have my trees right there, I'm going to be adding those buildings by drawing some rectangles. They are hiding behind the trees though. So how I'll do this is I'll draw two straight lines and connect. And you can add as many buildings as you want or as few. I'm just going to be adding 4 right here. And that's actually it for our final draw. So if you would like to pause the video and go back to watch it, you can go ahead and do so, but I'm going to be moving on to my coloring. So when you are done with your picture, it should look something like this. So this is mine, drawn in only pencil. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be taking my black Sharpie and I'm only going to outline my spoon. So with my cap on the back, I'm making sure to hold low and go slow to outline only my spoon. Take your time with this step. There is no rush to outlining your picture. When you're done outlining your spoon, you're also going to outline the stem to the cherry. So not the actual cherry itself, only the stem. And if you want to make it a little bit thicker, you can go ahead and do so. After you are done with your black Sharpie, you're going to take a brown Sharpie next, and you're going to outline everything else except for those trees. So just to let myself know not to outline those trees, I'm going to start on the buildings first. So with my brown Sharpie, I'm outlining those trees. Or excuse me, I'm only outlining the buildings. Please do not outline the trees. And then I'm going to outline the cherry. And that ground line. And the water. Remember, we're not outlining the trees, but the buildings and the cherry and the lake. So when you're done, your picture should look like this. Go ahead and take your eraser and erase any of those pencil lines that you may see, except for on those trees, because you do need those to be able to see the rest of your picture. But take that moment to erase those pencil lines. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start painting. One thing I do like to do is I like to take some masking tape or artist tape, and I'm going to tape my picture to the table. So I'll just take my blue tape, roll it, and stick it on the back so it can stay firmly in place on that table. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start painting. I like to work from top to bottom, big to small, so I'm going to start with the sky first. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be taking my white and my light blue. Now, while I do want that sky to be light blue, I do want it to gradually get lighter at the bottom. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that light blue and I'm also going to take my white, and I like to make sure I don't put them too close to each other on my paper plate or whatever palette you are using. Because what I'm going to do first is I'm going to mix just a little bit of light blue with my white. So I'm just going to scoop some of that light blue, take some of that white, and mix. So that way it should be just a little bit lighter. And I'm going to go ahead and paint the top of my picture. And if you do go over your cherry stem, that's okay because we will actually take our Sharpie and bring that right back. Then I'm going to take more white and add it to that mixture I had created before. So get this nice gradient that starts to get lighter and lighter. And if you do go over your trees and you're building a little bit, that's okay because we're just going to paint over it again. But just try your best to get as close as you can. Also, take your brush and blend it with the darker color above so you get that nice gradient. And like we did before, add more white and make sure it starts to go lighter. Now again, I am going over those trees and buildings just a little bit, and that is okay. Just as long as you get that nice gradient on your sky. All right, so there is my sky. I'm going to come back and add clouds later. I do want that sky to dry just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush. And I'll move on to those buildings next. Let me grab that paper towel so I can clean my brush. The next color I'm going to be grabbing, so I'm going to put those aside since I don't need them right now. I'm going to be taking out my light purple, my gray, and a little bit of white. So luckily I don't need a whole lot of it for those buildings. And I'm actually going to color my buildings 2 different colors, so I really don't need a whole lot of paint. So I'm going to be taking my medium brush. I'm going to mix gray, light purple, and white together. And we'll just put it to the side right here. Take some of that purple, or excuse me, light purple and white and mix. And then we'll take some gray. So you should have this kind of nice murky light purple color. So it kind of looks more like those buildings far away. And I am going to be painting this building and that small building right there. This time, try your best to stay within those lines. We want those buildings to be pretty neat. If you have too much paint, Don't hesitate to scrape off just a little bit. I'm just very gently and carefully going as close as I can to those lines. And same with this building right here. All right, I'm going to clean my brush. And for the next two buildings, I'm going to be adding medium blue, white, and gray together. So I have my regular blue here actually. And I don't need a whole lot, so I'm just going to put it right here on my palette, just a tiny bit. And I'm just going to take that with some white, mix that first. And add some gray. Scrape off any of that extra paint that you have. And go ahead and paint the rest of your buildings. If you have more buildings than I do, make sure you do paint those. And whatever colors you do use to paint those buildings, make sure you are adding some gray with it. It makes it look a little bit more like buildings far away. And I'll add that same color right here. Then go ahead and clean my brush. I've run out of some room on my palette, so I'm going to put this aside for now because I can always come back to it when I add those clouds. But I am going to be grabbing a new paper plate. And this time I'm going to be adding some light green and regular green and light brown. So let's get some green. And light green. And some light brown. Now I like adding just a little bit of brown to give it more of that earthy color. So let's take some light green first, some regular green, and mix that. And then I'm going to take some light brown, just a little bit, and add that. So right now it looks like I added a little bit too much brown. No worries, I can easily take some more of that light green and regular green and mix that. So a little bit of light brown goes a long way. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and paint my trees. And I'm using my medium brush, that way I get as close as I can to those lines. But however, if you do go outside those lines, that's okay. I just recommend what I call dabbing. Just do that on those trees, because we are going to be doing quite a bit of that dabbing motion on our picture. And try your best to get as close as you can to the ground. If you go over your buildings, that's okay too. And also get as close as you can to the spoon. All right, I'm still going around adding that color. Again, just to refresh, I used dark green, light green, and light brown. So if you do need to make any more of that mixture, make sure you're using those three colors. Again, make sure you're going close as you can to your spoon and to the ground. And I'm just going to continue dabbing. And dabbing helps to make it look more leafy, more organic, doesn't look too flat. And once we start adding a little bit more of those details to the picture, it will look a little bit more realistic. And don't forget this section here as well. As close as I can. All right, and then I'm going to paint this side as well. And I'm still dabbing in some of those areas just to make sure I'm getting as close as I can. So by the time that we are done painting those trees, we should not be able to see any more of those pencil lines. So if you do see any of those pencil lines, maybe take a moment to go back over and just dab on some of those areas and make sure you don't see any of those pencil lines. Using the same mixture that I have, I'm going to be taking some green and mixing with that mixture from previously. So it should look a little bit darker. We're going to be doing some more dabbing on our picture. So I'm just going to be taking this and dab. You can dab in some areas or in a lot of areas, but take that moment to dab your picture. If you do dab on your spoon on accident, that's okay, because once the paint does dry, we can just paint right over it. So there we can start to see some more shapes develop in those bushes. Now, while the green does look really nice, I actually want to make it just a little bit darker. So I'm going to take some dark brown. I'm going to put my brush there for a moment. Take some dark brown. And I won't need a whole lot because a little bit of that dark color goes a long way. I'm going to scrape off that extra paint. Take just a tiny bit of that brown and mix it with my mixture. So now it's becoming more of an earthy green. And if it gets a little bit too dark, no worries. You can just add some more light green and dark green with it. And we're going to do that same thing by dabbing a little bit closer to the bottom this time. Because remember, our light source is the sun, which is invisible up here. So the tops of the trees would be lighter than at the bottom. So I'm just going to be taking my brush and dabbing in some of those areas. And you can get as close as you can to the ground. If you do go over into that grassy area, that's okay. Just like with your spoon, we can go right over and paint it again. And if you want it to be a little bit darker, just take some more dark brown and add it. You can even make it look like trunks to go a little bit higher. That is up to you. All right, and there are our trees, but we do want to make them look a little bit lighter on top. So let's go ahead and clean that brush as best as we can. Wipe off that extra water because acrylic paint does not get along well with water. Now this time I'm going to be taking some of that mixture I had before and adding a little bit more light green. So I want that color to be lighter than before. And I'm going to be taking my brush and just dabbing the tops of my trees. So I need to add a little bit more light green this time. And I'm just going to dab on the tops of my trees. So that way we're making those trees a little bit more fuller. And you can do it in some areas too, so it looks like they're jutting out just a bit more. And there are our trees. Clean your brush because we're actually going to go back and add those clouds next. We're going to be doing the same motion with what we did with the bushes and trees for our clouds. So I'm going to be putting this aside because I don't need this right now. I'm actually going to go back to this and add some more white onto my palette. I'm going to try my best not to waste any paper plates today. So I'm going to be taking some white. So I am done with these colors that are next to Fibo. I'm going to put them aside. And I'm only using white right now. But if you do want to add a little bit of light blue to it, you can. However, I'm just going to go straight for the white, making sure that there's not a whole lot of paint. I'm going to do that same dabbing motion. And so some of those areas will have a little bit more white than others. But I'm just going to go ahead and add some clouds by tapping. And you can even take your brush and run it along to make stratus clouds. Or you can tap to make cumulonimbus clouds. But as you've probably noticed, I haven't dipped my brush in the white paint at all. I'm trying my best to use up all the paint on my brush before I go back and dip just a tiny bit. So I'm really trying my best to utilize all that white paint on my brush by dabbing. It's like my brush is a woodpecker. And again, I'm trying my best to use all that paint on my brush. And blending by tapping, because that way it creates that nice cloud texture. If you want those clouds to be bigger, just simply go around it. And I'm just going to add a little bit more clouds. I can add a bigger one here. Remember, less paint is more. We want to make sure that those clouds look realistic. Again, you can brush it back and forth. Make it look a little bit hazy outside. Remember, Minnesota is a pretty wet climate place, and it is cloudy throughout the year. Or I should say partly cloudy, not super overcast. You can go over your cherry a little bit, add those lines. If you don't even want clouds, you don't have to have those clouds. But just try your best to build up those clouds, add those lines. And if you want to go the extra mile to make those clouds look even more realistic, I would have the top of the clouds even brighter and on the bottom of the clouds just a little bit more faded from that background. Because again, our sun is up here, and so the tops of the clouds is hitting that light source. All right, so there is that cloud. Again, if you want to add more clouds, you can add as many as you want. So there is our background. All right. So there is that. We're now going to go ahead and focus on the ground. So I'm going to put that aside, and I'm actually going to be taking out back to this palette because I'm actually going to just use this straight up green right here. I have a lot on my brush, so I'm going to try my best to spread that around. I'm only going to be painting my grass. So this area right here, that is the lake, so we don't want to paint that green. So right now we're just focusing on the grass. And if you do get a little bit of that green on the lake or your spoon, that is okay. Just try your best to get as close as you can. All right. Getting as close as I can to those lines. Same on this side. And if you need to switch to a smaller brush, you can. All right, so there is my grass. Now, depending on what type of paint you're using, it might be a little bit more transparent. So you might have to go back over and add another layer of that paint. Depends on the type of brand of paint you are using. With mine, I am going to go over and just add another coat of paint to make sure that it is really green. Again, getting close to that spoon. If you do get a little bit of that green on there, that is okay. All right, I'm going to clean my brush as best as I can. And now I'm going to be moving on to the water. I have some blue right here that I saved from earlier. So let me just move that aside, and also the white paint. Because I'm going to just take my blue right here. I'm going to go underneath. Right along there. I'll probably have to grab some more blue. I'm being really close to my spoon and the grass. Again, get as close as you can. All right, so just painting with that. I'm also going to take that same blue and go around here. And also here and here. Because now I'm going to be grabbing some light blue and mixing it with my regular blue. So I'm actually going to put my plate to the side here, grab a new one just so I can mix some more colors. So I'm using blue. And some light blue. And then I'm going to mix my blue and light blue together. And we're going to be doing essentially kind of the same thing that we did with that sky. We're going to get gradually lighter. So here is my blue mixed with light blue. And I'm just going to paint right there, going back and forth. So it might be hard to tell that gradient, but you do want to aim for having a nice gradient so it is a reflection. So now that I have this blue here, I'm going to take some light blue because it's reflecting the sky. and make it lighter, but not too light because we want it to be darker than our sky. And adding that gradient again. Really try your best to spread that color around. If you find that some areas are just too light, you can easily go back and add a little bit of your blue and go right on top of that, because we're actually going to be adding some waves to that water in a short bit. All right, and there is my water. I'm going to grab some blue and light blue, mix and finish up that water. All right, I do want to add some lines to my water. So making sure that your paint is nice and even and still a little bit wet on your canvas or paper, whatever you're using. You're going to make sure that your brush is pretty clean, because now we're just going to add some lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a tiny bit of blue paint onto my brush. I'm just going to add some lines and just blend them into that water. Don't need a whole lot of paint, just like with the clouds. Just wanting to make sure that we get those lines on the water. You can add as many as you want or as few, but I'm just adding those lines. And they don't have to be exactly even and perfect. I'm just making sure that my water looks like it's got some waves. All right. I'm actually going to go back to the grass real quickly. I do have all of this blue right here. So with my blue and green, I'm going to make it a little bit darker so I can add a bit of shading to my picture. So let's take some of that blue and green and mix. And I'm just going to add a little bit of that green here. And here as well. You can add those lines too, like we did in the water, just so it looks like that grass is going out in the distance. All right. We need to add some grass to our picture before we finish our spoon. So I've got all this nice color right here from previous. And I also have this green here. So I'm just going to take some of this green here. And I'm going to add some green and light green together. Make sure that it is light enough, because with your small brush, you're just going to add some grass to your picture. It looks a little bit too dark, so let me add some more light green. And I'm just going to add that grass by just adding those simple lines. I'm just going top to bottom, adding those lines. You can even add some darker green lines too if you'd like. But I'm just going to add them onto the closer parts of my grass. So I'm not going to add too much grass on that background. You can just gently tap if you would like. There is my grass for my picture. Again, don't add it all over on that grass. The most important thing is just to add it on those closer areas here, because as our picture is going farther into the distance, you don't see too much of that grass. So you can just take some of that extra paint on your brush and just tap some certain areas. But it's up to you. Just make sure you are adding some grass to your picture. So there is some of my grass. Also, textures are nice in pictures too. So that way we got some textures right there. Especially because we have such nice textures in our sky and our bushes that we should have some of that texture on the grass as well. Speaking of textures, I'm actually going to take just a tiny bit of my dark brown. And you remember those colors that we had previously that we used for the buildings? I'm going to actually add some brown to that and add some lines. That way it just looks a little bit more like those buildings. And same, I'm going to get just a tiny bit of dark brown, add it to my bluish gray mixture. Add just a tiny bit more dark brown. A little bit more. And some more, just to make sure it is a little bit darker. And adding those lines. And there we go. So now we're going to be moving on to the spoon, and we also have to do the reflection of the spoon too. So I have some nice white right here, and hopefully I have enough room for some of that gray. So I'm going to put this paint aside because the first thing I'm going to be doing is using my gray and white. So I'm going to get some gray on my palette. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint my spoon straight up gray. We will add some highlights and shading to it, but for right now, paint both the top and the underside of your spoon that gray color. And this time, get as close as you can to those lines because we don't want to get any gray onto our trees. We worked so hard on making sure that that texture is very nice and they look a little bit more realistic. So try your best to stay as close as you can to the inside of your spoon. If you need to switch to a smaller brush, which I will do in just a short bit probably, I highly recommend doing that. But I'm going to take my medium brush and fill in the rest of my spoon. Again, get as close as you can to those lines. Really spread that paint around. We want to make sure we don't see any of our canvas. All right, and there is the top of my spoon. I'm going to just go ahead and switch to my small brush so I can get those areas. So again, make sure you've got all of those white spots. All right, I actually need to mix some blue with some gray, and I really don't need a whole lot because it's for the underside of that spoon. So I'm going to take some blue and gray. Make it just a little bit darker. Get some more blue. So again, I use some gray and blue, and I'm just very carefully going to get below and just to make sure that it is a little bit darker, I'm going to add a little bit of dark brown to it. So here's my mixture here. I don't need that whole lot. So I'm going to take some dark brown, add it to that, making sure that it's dark enough. I'm going to get some more dark brown. and mix it with my blue-gray mixture. Get to the underside of that spoon. If you did go outside of that line a little bit, no worries, because you still have some gray on your palette, hopefully. So I can easily take that gray and just paint right over it. All right, now I do need to add some more of that shading and highlighting. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get some gray and white and mix that together. So I'm going to just take my gray and white here. I'm going to take this mixture that I have with my small brush, because it's a small area, and I'm just going to go right over and paint on the top part of my spoon. That way it should start to mix with the gray below. And if it doesn't, you can always go back with your gray paint and make sure that it blends together. Also, I want to make sure that my spoon dips in the middle. So I'm going to take that and go around my spoon. Make sure that it's nicely blended. So I might have to get some gray and just make sure that it blends in the middle. So we've got that nice gradient like we did with our sky and our water. All right, and there is my spoon. Clean your brush as best as you can. Check to see if there's any areas that might need a little bit more blending. For example, I could add a little bit gray right here so it's a nicer gradient from the light gray to the regular gray. Check to make sure that everything's nice and neat. You need to go back and add it up to be a little bit lighter. You can do that as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill that cherry with that color. I have some extra room on my plate right here. So I'm going to be taking my red, and I will be using some dark brown and white in just a bit. So first things first, I'm going to take my red, fill that in first. All right, I'm getting as close as I can. I don't want to get any of that red on the spoon. Now I'm going to take some red and some dark brown and mix to make it just a little bit of a darker red because I want to add that shading to it. I'm going to take that darker mixture and go along right here to make this part just a bit darker. And if you need to take some more dark brown, you can do that. Just make sure it's nice and dark on the bottom right of that cherry. So let me go ahead and grab a little bit more dark brown. I'm running out of a little bit. Just add that darker area. All right, and once you're done with that, you're going to grab some white and mix it with your red. So I've got some white here with my red. Make sure it's nicely mixed together and it's not too bright. You only need a little bit for the top of that cherry right there. So let me grab a little bit more. And if you find that maybe it's just not well mixed like you'd like it to, clean your brush and then take some regular red and blend. Now you do still need to have your red on you and your gray. I'm going to take my brush and I'm just going to add some lines because we are now adding that reflection. And I don't need a lot of paint. In fact, make sure you don't have a lot of paint because you want it to kind of blend with that blue from the water. So I'm going to take my red and add those lines. I'm also going to take that same mixture that I did for gray. So let me grab that palette so you can see. Taking that gray, and I'm just going to draw those lines. And I'm only doing it in this area right here because remember it's a reflection. My spoon's not all the way down here. I'm going to take that gray too and add those lines. And if you find that maybe it's a little bit too light, no worries. Just take your blue and you can go right over it and mix those colors together. So I've got some blue. I'm just going right over it because you don't want it to be too bright. All right. Once your picture is completely dry, check to see if there's any other things you want to add. Maybe you want to just take some light blue, add some lines to that water to make it a little bit lighter if you'd like. But also don't forget to bring that cherry stem back in by taking your black Sharpie and drawing it back in. So I'll take my Sharpie, make sure that your picture is completely dry before filling in that stem again. And that is our picture inspired by Minnesota of Claus Oldenburg's sculpture, Spoon with Cherry. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had a lot of fun learning about Minnesota. Please post your pictures online. We would love to see them. And we will see you next time. Bye.